bitte. Welcome to this week's NORA Startup webinar, number 26 in total. The title of today's webinar is Taking the Leap from Researcher to Entrepreneur. In this week's NORA Startup, we will discuss the process and importance of commercialization of research, starting companies out of academia. We will explore why it is important for these commercialization processes, and we will discuss how to get started. We'll discuss the process of moving from basic research to something that can be financially beneficial in a startup, including protecting our intellectual property rights, how to disclose inventions, patents, and to the university, and various opportunities for funding to help and succeed this difficult path of commercialization of research. We're so lucky to have three very skilled speakers today. They will first give a short presentation, and then we will end with a debate. First speaker out will be Lars Ailo Bong, who is a professor at the University of Tromsø and co-founder of Medsensio. Following will be Gisle Østreng, head of investments at Startup Lab. And last speaker out will be Ranveig Strøm, director of innovations with Simula Innovations Lab. My name is Morten Goodwin. I'm a university professor at the University of Agder, and keeping in mind that this is a talk that is mostly for you, the listeners. So if you have any questions to any of the speakers, please go ahead and put them in the chat. Specifically today, we will explore and discuss why should a researcher think about starting a company? What's in it for us researchers to actually innovate, make companies? How can one emerge from an academic and entrepreneurial mindset? How can we assess the opportunity of commercialization of research, and how can we build intellectual property and commercialization strategy? And one person that has experience with all of this, both from an academic point of view and from a commercialization point of view, is our first speaker, Lars Ailo Bong, who is a professor at the University of Tromsø and has experience with founding companies, including Medsensio. And he is a specialist in health technology from the Department of Computer Science at the University of Tromsø, and he is the principal investigator of the Health Data Lab. His main research interest builds on experimentally evaluating infrastructure systems, and his experience in funding Medsensio is very valuable to us researchers as well. So we're very excited when we're opening up for Lars Ailo Bongo's talk. So Lars Ailo, please explain to us what Medsensio is and why this is important for us researchers.
Thank you, Morten, for the nice introduction. So I'm sharing my screen. I assume you can see it. So in this talk, so what I will be like, it's a very short talk. So talking about like basically as a researcher, how can you get out of doing basic research to something that's a little bit higher up in the technical readiness level. So basically how to move from research to an entrepreneurship. And I haven't actually done this myself. So it's more like, how can you make someone else take this leap? So first, so why do you want, why as a researcher you may want to commercialize your research? So why go from this like nice table you can put into a paper to something that's much more complex, that's a product or something that's useful for others? So for my own like reason was mainly that I was very interested in this process. So how do you actually do a startup? What are the steps? Like I know of companies, and so I wanted to figure this out. But I also later realized that an important like effect of starting to think about the big picture is that my research is actually, in my opinion at least, better. And I also think that the students are more happy with having like a wider picture. They see that the research is actually useful for something. And my collaborators in this project that led to the startup of Medsensio, they were very interested in actually outreach activities. So making the research not just in a paper, but as a, in their case, like a training tool for medical students. And also, like, I really enjoy working with young people, and like there is a good team that has started and they are succeeding. So like being part of like a fun team is also an important motivation for me at least. And of course, like as a researcher, I think we have a societal responsibility to create like new private jobs in the private sector. So like that sounds all great, but like the first thing is maybe your research is not worth billions of kroner. So if you think, okay, I have my nice basic research results, I think this is very valuable. Maybe like the normal route of doing this is to send a disclosure of invention, a so-called DOFI scheme, like application or scheme. And that thing then may end up in a patent. This is not my patent, by the way. And if there's like, if you're lucky, then maybe someone actually signs the license agreement, and maybe then the idea is, okay, then I'm going to make the big money. But I think this process doesn't like, usually it doesn't go as well that you actually end up making a lot of money of this. So instead, I think like a more reasonable approach is to do like go up that technical readiness level step by step. And the best way of probably doing that is to like think about like do a startup, not have just like a patent that will be licensed. And as a part of like creating a startup, probably the first thing to start about is thinking about the concept. So what is the concept for my startup? How do I validate? Or you should probably validate the concept, build up a team that can do the startup, build maybe a technical prototype, get the financing in place so that you can have the startup and then start like moving up this ladder. And then if you're lucky, then maybe your research can actually become worth billions of kroner. And then like usually when I talk about startups with academia, like usually the first question, which I think is also a very misunderstood like topic, is this so-called three-way sharing model that the Norwegian universities have, which is basically that your income for the license agreement, you remember that DOFI thing, that's split three-way between the researchers, the university, and the technology transfer office of the university. But I think this is actually not the problem. I think this is fine. And as an AI researcher, you probably want to do this. To just like give an example in that Messencio case, so we are quite many in the research team, and my share of the research or the invention is 14%. And as I said, that thing is split three ways. So I get like 14% divided by 3 of the income that is covered in the license agreement. And this is like from the agreement. I haven't like included the numbers because that's something you don't want to share. But basically, it's not that much of money I will get out of this or license agreement. So maybe I can buy like a couple of bottles of nice wine, but it's not, I can't buy a new house of this license income. But it's not the problem, especially if you think of from the startup's point of view, because what this license agreement does, like the license fee should be reasonable so that actually the startup have like a good chance of making money in the long term. But in AI, like having access to data, especially if you're working with sensitive data, health data is like essential. And this license agreement, it can be a way or maybe the only way of getting access to this data. It can also provide you an exclusive license to develop a product based on this data. So basically you're blocking others from making similar startups and using the data in a similar way. It's also a way of patenting the research and getting this process paid for by the university. And that's again useful for a startup to have like protected IP in the form of patents. And it also gives access to additional funding sources, which is only available if you have if the TTO is involved. So basically, it's not a problem of this giving away 2/3 of your license income because it's not that much money. Maybe more controversial, like also I think that as a professor or associate professor, maybe you are not the right person to do the startup. You're not the person that probably should make the leap, especially if you plan to stay in academia and have like a full-time job. So I think like if you are then thinking about how should this startup, how should the shares be distributed, most of that should probably go to the founding team, the people that are going to do all the work and take all the risk and work for not great salary maybe the first year. So maybe the research team has like a small share of the company, and they're like eventually there will be some investors that like buy shares. So in this Messencio company, so currently I just own like 8.9% of that company. I think that's totally fine for me, but because I'm not an active partner in the startup. And like the reason why this is probably a useful thing, and maybe like the two other speakers, Randy and Ranveig and Gisle, can say a little bit more about that, But this because you're basically setting up the company to be able to get the financing you want to structure, you want the team to share distribution and so on to actually make it fundable, so you can sort of move up the value creation curve. And then at the end, then maybe you will make the big money. And of course, if even 1% of $1 billion is 10 million, so then you can buy that house. So that was the end of my short introductory presentation.
So thank you, Lars. You said that it might at best be able to give you enough money to buy a couple of bottles of wine. So my taste in wine is very expensive. So that seems like a lot of money for me. But my question is rather, how much did the university allow you to do that? Was that something that the university said, let's please go ahead? Or did the university say, if you start this startup, we should have 50% of whatever revenue comes out?
So the license revenue, that's because of we have this again this license between the company and UIT.
Okay.
And the main reason for having that license is to have access to the data used to train the machine learning models, which the technology is built around. So that's set, that's fixed. So there is, I think all universities in Norway have this 3-way sharing model. So, but again, I don't really care. That's not where the money is. The money is in actually the building a startup and making the startup very, very valuable. So there's having shares in the startup is where I think the big money is.
I understand. Potential big money, let's say. Great. That was a good talk. And we will then swiftly go over to our next speaker, who is Gisle Østereng, Head of Investments at Startup Lab. Gisle has a very interesting background. He has been a high-tech venture entrepreneur since 2006. He's built several teams and secured funding and closed business-to-business sales globally in various NTNU startups, such as Ceram Coatings, Dynamic Rock Support, and Stream Technologies, and is heading up the Startup Lab investment team. So we're very interested to hear what you have of insight to give us researchers. Gisle, please.
Thank you so much, Morten, and thank you so much for the invitation. It's great to be here. I'll just try to speak verbally without any presentation, but I can start with a bit why this topic engages me a lot. I studied at NTNU in early 2000. We then made GSM technology without having any ambition of setting up any company related to that. And Sweden had Ericsson, Finland and Nokia. We did nothing. It was such an embarrassment that I figured, okay, so getting from R&D results over to successful enterprises, that's something I would like to dig deeper in. So what I've done is more or less what you said. I've been setting up SecuStream, a IT company which was sold to Telenor based on great NTNU research. I was also co-founder CEO in Dynamic Rock Support, where we went to the underground mines all over the planet, selling rock bolts or mining equipment. Also did the same in Ceram Coatings, which still has a great potential, but where we had a much more challenging way out of the academia into the more commercial world. Right now, I work with the Startup Lab in Oslo, and I head up the investment part. We are amongst Norway's most active early phase investors. So we have a portfolio of 130 companies in all sorts of industries, except the negative ones, such as porn and weapons and these kind of things. So we love ideas that are based on research. And why is that? That's normally because you have something that you can protect. You have some kind of advantage compared to everybody else, and you might be able to patent that if you're lucky. That gives you an advantage in some kind of peaceful environment from your competitors for the next 15, 20 years, and that's really helpful. What we do in Startup Lab is to have incubators, a place to sit in Oslo and Bergen. And in these incubators, you don't get only a place to be and a cup of coffee, you get a lot of help. In Startup Lab, we have a team of 20 skilled people, and many of them have been entrepreneurs themselves. And we help you with raising ambitions, we're asking you questions like, how can you grow 10 times as fast? How can you get 10 times as many customers? And also we train people a bit on where to focus, what is important, how do you set up the right team? And then we also contribute with acceleration and investment in some cases. We are mainly funded by Norwegian government in addition to Norwegian industry companies. And these companies that are partners, they know how to behave to startups. They don't steal ideas, they only help. So they will be normally your first customer, or at least pointing in a good direction. Our investment money comes from successful entrepreneurs. So we are created not to optimize profit, but more or less to help the next generation of entrepreneurs based on the good results of the previous generation. So amongst our investors, we have Oda, Kahoot, Opera founders, and many others. So our money comes with a kind of network. We can talk to any of our investors whenever we want, whenever it's appropriate and relevant for the companies we work with. So looking at today's topic, should you as a researcher ever look at starting a company and being a part of that? In my world, there's only one answer to that. Life is too short never to try being a part of a startup. So I have done that several times, sometimes with success, other times not. Still, it's such a great experience, and you learn so much that everybody who gets a chance should try it, I think. But don't forget, you don't need to be Elon Musk and you don't need to be Bill Gates. The important thing is to build a good team. So on the commercial side, you should have people who've done it before. That will really help you out a lot. You don't have to learn everything on the commercial side. You can just focus on the science. And I think that's a great advantage when you set up what we call kick-ass teams. Sorry, my English. And then when you get those people on board, you will naturally look at what is your global market? Who on this planet should buy your product? Will they pay enough? Will they give you a margin? Those kind of things are super important to attract investors. And then I touched upon it. You should have some kind of sustainable advantage. Could be a market position, probably not. Could be technology and patent, that might be. But the important thing is make sure you always have a good team that can actually sell whatever your product is. And whenever you found product market fit in some kind of niche, just take that niche globally. A very normal pitfall, other than not having a kick-ass team, is to start with Oslo, then you take Drammen, then you take Sandefjord, Tønsberg, and you walk around the coast, rather than thinking, okay, so what if I don't have a home market? Who on this planet can buy easily and who can be big customers? If you think like that, your company will scale much better and you will get much better investors. And I think already from when you decide what you are focusing on in your R&D project, you should start thinking on what are the big problems out there that are really nice to have solved quite soon. We know this is a challenge for industry, for the globe, for countries. That's probably a place where you can earn money later on. So if you start looking at, if I solve this problem, what kind of value proposition can I have? That's a very good start, because if you're creating something valuable, you will have customers and you will have investors. So I think the bottom line from our side is, if you're ambitious, if you're based on tech, Startup Lab is here to help you guys. And normally at most universities, you have some kind of tech transfer office that is ready and eager to help. We love to work with those, and we have found good methods of sharing upside in terms of shares and license revenues with inventors, with universities, and of course on the founding team, which is incredibly important for our side. We also worked with many international investors in the 10 years we have been operational. So we know who are eager to work with us in the way we believe in. And we believe in companies where the founders have control at least the first 3 to 5 years. So bottom line, do it if you get a chance, but don't go into all the pitfalls everybody else have fallen into. Give us a call, we'll be ready to help. And then it's going to be so much easier. And I wish all of you good luck.
So thanks, Gisle. That was some insightful insight to us. You said that you make money from when your companies are successful. So how does that work in practice? So if I start a company through you, how can you make money from my success?
So when we invest, we invest others' money, and we kind of earn a little bit on being that kind of helper for our investors.
Mm-hmm.
And if that company is really successful, we earn some extra bonus. So whenever our investors and companies do well, we do well as well. But it's also important to mention that there's many helpers out there. It's a very much growing ecosystem. So you should find the helper and the assistants and the advisors that you think is best for your company. And we love to be kind of the Olympia toppen or toppidrett center for ambitious tech entrepreneurs. So if you have ambitions of taking the entire planet, that's when we love to work with you.
So great. So if you have ambitions of taking the entire planet, limited to our planet, we should talk to you. It's not like Elon Musk that goes to other planets. But
our planet and maybe also metaverse. Let's see.
Oh, so that's also in. Okay, great. But we'll look forward to hearing more from you in the debate later, because we're now transitioning over to the last speaker. We say the most important speaker from last, and this is of course Ranveig Strøm, Director of Innovation at Simula Research Lab. Also, Ranveig has a very interesting background. She's now working at Simula Research Lab, Director of Innovation. She's currently responsible for the incubator Gründergarasjen, and she has a lot of experience, among other, from CERN in Switzerland, and she has many ideas of entrepreneurship activities and knowledge of how to do transfer, etc. So this is very insightful for us researchers out there. So Ranveig, what can you teach us about innovation and research?
I hope a few things. Thank you for the introduction, and thanks for inviting me. And also, I really enjoyed hearing the talks of the two former speakers. So as you said, my name is Ranveig, and I'll focus a bit on the kind of global view on commercializing and starting a company as a researcher, and get down to a couple more practical things at the end, and hopefully we can also discuss after. For the past decade, really, I have devoted a huge part of my life to the field of entrepreneurship and innovation, always being in the intersection between tech startups and academia. So I have my education from the NTNU School of Entrepreneurship. I've worked in startups, helped startups, and developed a range of courses, competitions, and offering aimed at startups. As was just said, I've worked at CERN. I was responsible for entrepreneurship at CERN in Switzerland, where I worked in the knowledge transfer department, helping high energy physicists and engineers get started with building startups. So currently I'm the Director of Innovation at Simula, where I'm responsible for the incubator and resource center Gründergarasjen, which is an early stage tech incubator run by Simula in collaboration with Oslo Met, where startups from within these organizations, but also some external companies, can get 12 months, only 12 months. We're really in the very earliest of phases, and the companies are going to grow out of Gründergarasjen and move on from there. But 12 months of free office space, resources, follow-up, and network. And what makes Gründergarasjen unique, we're quite different. It's really that we have one leg inside of the research organizations that we're connected to, and one leg in the startup team, working every day helping to build and grow startups. So we understand both of these worlds, and this enables us to translate opportunities between the two, create collaborations between startup students and researchers. In fact, the past 3 years, we've connected more than 90 IT students at Oslo Met to work in startup companies across the semester, which has been highly successful. And we're also helping the research organization that we're connected to succeed with innovation. And as you may understand, I'm well over averagely interested in starting companies out of academia. And I really know that the potential, but the potential for researchers taking what they've been working on, what they're passionate about, it's really massive. And we see that in some countries and in some universities, companies are spun out in plenty. So in Norway, we do not yet have a strong culture for this, but I'm really, really seeing it picking up the pace and evolving so quickly now. And there are really so many reasons to engage in company creation and commercialization. For a researcher, a major driver is the impact. So having impact and getting your research out there. And I strongly believe that startups very often are the most powerful tool to reach impact. So traditionally, a lot of people have thought, oh, you shouldn't make money on your company, but actually making money and creating value is often the most efficient way to drive this impact. And in fact, I want to pick up on what Lars said earlier, when he told us that his research actually got better. So we have seen that those who commercialize actually also publish more. And another side of the whole impact sphere is that the world is reliant on so many new innovations to meet challenges such as climate change, overpopulation, hunger, and so on. So this is really more relevant than ever. And startups are a really important part of meeting these challenges. But also, taking part or trying to build a company, you will learn a lot. So it will be a journey of huge personal growth. It will be an opportunity to solve a lot of problems. And also failing may also be a way to have massive learning. Failure isn't worth anything without learnings, but the insight it can bring to you can really, really accelerate the opportunities in the future. And also the requirements for attracting funding is changing. So putting innovation in the spotlight, and this is being increasingly more and more important in order to attract research funds. And we also see that the future of work do require more entrepreneurial competences. And then there are also some challenges. So these are the kind of the why you should do it, the huge opportunities. But the challenges is that starting companies is really, really hard. And especially for those who have not done it before or have peers around them who have. And it's for sure not for everyone. Another challenge is that commercializing research is not very much incentivized in Norway today. So the main rule in Norway when it comes to inventions by employees is that the university have the rights to the IPR. So this gives the university or their connected TTO a large degree of control over what is commercialized, who have rights, and how things are done when setting up a spin-off. And many find the negotiation process long and tiring in a situation where the power is skewed and incentives are not really there. So don't misunderstand me, having a university in your back and they or their TTO can contribute with help when it comes to patenting, contract, but it does not really help much for the lack of incentive. And in addition, researchers are measured on how much they publish, and then many will spend a lot of time on education as well. The pressure to deliver results are already quite big and many are working a lot. And on top of that, universities are not either incentivized much today to commercialize. And while strategies put innovation in the headlines, the real incentives are lagging behind. And often researchers are just met with a form stating that you have to register your idea if you have one. So with all this in mind, researchers that do commercialize today, they really need to have a really strong drive, or peers around them that can help them navigate the space and encourage them. So we do see that strategies are changing, policies are changing, funding schemes are changing, and I'm sure that the incentives will change to the better soon too. And there has definitely happened a lot when it comes to how people look upon entrepreneurship in academia. I really feel that it's now cheered upon and that many researchers are now ready to make the leap into entrepreneurship. They are just needing some tools, some knowledge, some encouragement to understand how they can go about it. And at Gründergarasjen, we have really seen this recently, because we have developed, together with Aslamet, a training course to develop the next generation of entrepreneurs coming from academia, where researchers are developing real innovation projects through a 12-week course series with help from seasoned entrepreneurs and experts. So we closed the application last week, and we are really astonished to see the interest. We will have around 30 participants for the first batch, which will start just over New Year's. And around half of the participants will be PhDs, postdocs, researchers, and professors. And the recurring message is, I have a dream to become an entrepreneur. I have plenty of ideas. I just don't know where to start. So just to end all of this with some practical advice as a researcher, if you want to become an entrepreneur, is first to say, okay, what is your motivation? If your motivation is to earn quick money, well, then go another way. It's a hard journey. I mean, your shares can be worth a lot down the line, but if that's your main motivation, go become a consultant. If your drive is that you want to create impact and you want to get your work out there in the world, then you've come to the right place. So of course you need to do a due diligence. What knowledge is your idea based on? Is there something patentable there? Who owns the IP? Maybe the funding behind come from joint research with another research organization or company, and just the ownership there needs to be clear. What does your contract state? And what is the policy of the university? If all of this is clear and the university owns the IP, there will be negotiations and work with contract ownership and dissemination strategy. But even before you go there and do that, you can do some research on the opportunity you have in front of you. What is the potential market? What's the size of the opportunity? How long has the development of the technology come, the TRL level, as Lars mentioned? What's the potential funding need to get this to the market? And how could a company be built based on this opportunity? These are things you can already start investigating and play with and do. And some may also leave the university and branch off to start a company that's not based on the research, that has no connection like this to academia, and then stuff will be easier. And as Lars also said, some may collaborate with students, where a researcher can have an important role as an expert, while students do the main part of the commercialization. And get training. Like even before you start, even before you're working on something concrete, getting entrepreneurial competencies and mindset will be, and getting kind of a toolbox to get started can prove to be highly valuable. You could try to surround yourself with people who have done it before, or people who are going through the same challenges. So coming to a place like Gründergarasjen or Startup Lab, where you can meet people who kind of think this and are breeding entrepreneurship every day. And while I said that starting a company earlier is really hard, it does not always have to be. If you have some unique insight, you're targeting a big enough opportunity, and this have been vetted, you've been able to find people who can complement you, some people who have built companies before, it could be quite easy to attract more people to build the companies and get traction. And just a final note, I see that you can get a lot of these things through the NORA.startup community. So engage there, and if you have the freedom and opportunity, why just don't get started? Okay. Thanks.
Great, Randveig. So perfect segue now into the debate that we will have. I'll just start off with one question for you. You talked about impact. So as a researcher, impact really matters for me, right? I want to make something that changes. But the biggest impact that came from CERN, at least as a computer scientist, is this World Wide Web, which was not commercialized. So did Tim Berners-Lee make a mistake? Maybe you should make a company out of the web instead of making it freely available. So what would you give advice to him with this idea of World Wide Web? Of course, it's 30 years old now, but
yeah, I think it's really interesting to see some of the inventions that have come out of CERN. So there's actually not a lot of people, like there are people, but there's actually not a lot of people who know that the World Wide Web started there, or actually that the foundations of the touch screen also started at CERN. Yes, there's actually quite a lot of inventions that were not really commercialized. That's also quite, it's some things that are especially complicated with CERN having 23 member states owning the whole project, and a lot of people that are associated to other universities that are working at CERN. So doing the due diligence there may be quite hard. But openness is a very important aspect of CERN, that things should be disseminated openly. And the only reason CERN takes ownership, or not, it never takes ownership. The only reason CERN takes patent, for instance, is because they believe that that's the strategy that will disseminate it, give it most dissemination.
I see. Yeah.
So in cases where publishing openly or having open source software is the most efficient way to get traction and to get people use it, it's always chosen by CERN. And
let's just welcome the other speakers on the stage, also Lars and Gisle. So Lars, for example, Randveig is now talking about opening open source, this type of thing. Is Medsensio working with open or is it closed source?
So as a research group, I'm very I try to make all of our research open source and also open access to data if it's possible. But in case of Medsensio, that was something we didn't open source, so that is actually not free level for others, and that's because that's the core technology of the company, so we don't want to give away that part.
So, and Gisle, generally advice as a researcher, I'm always thinking openness because I want to make my publications open. I want to make my source code open. If I were to start a company, let's say in medicine, as Lars has done, would you guide towards openness, or would you say that we should keep my secrets close to my chest?
Well, you might actually consider doing both. In my startups, we made sure we wrote a patent application first, where we didn't really reveal all the secrets, but some key parts. And the same with the publications. You can always talk about results, but you don't have to publicize exactly how you did all the magic stuff. So I think you can do both and succeed well in both terms.
Right. So, but the trend in publications, at least, that more and more is easily reproducible, and there's kind of a shift that everything is source code put available out there. But I'm thinking that for a company, it's a little bit different, right? Because you may not want to put everything out there. Or am I mistaken?
I think you're right, but this is a tricky world that we don't really understand 120% ourselves. So always, before publicizing anything that might be new, please check with your local patent expert if there's anything that should be protected before you do that.
All right.
And you don't. I mean, patents are more on a concept level, and it's kind of funny what kind of concepts that are not already patented. There's much you can actually protect, even if you think it's impossible. So please always check.
So right, and one of the things that it seems to, at least you seem to understand, is the need for quote kick-ass team, as you said. So what do you think about that, Randveig? Is that important if I want to start an entrepreneurial company? Is the team the essential part?
The team is the most important part.
Important.
That's really your bread and butter. So having a team, and if we're talking about creating scalable companies, like a technology company that should be able to grow and you know that it will take time, you can't start a team with having 20 people. Maybe you think, oh, I need 20 people to get this to the market. That's in most cases not very useful or possible. So you need to be quite few in the beginning to be able to not have a too big cash burn, and then in the future also know that you can incentivize the people you have on board. So the few people that you start with then really should complement each other, bring unique competencies to the team, and be credible. So if you're a researcher and you have a unique insight, on what you're doing, Gisle also said, well, you should definitely have someone on board that have kind of the entrepreneurial competences, that have built startups before, know kind of the formal things you have to go through, the steps of getting your company funded. And that doesn't mean that you need to be the technical person and the other person needs to have a business education. That's more, you need to have someone who can build it, and you need to have someone who can sell it. And as a company, you need to have really great people with the right set of skills to be able to attract other people again.
I see.
Right?
Yeah, I see. It's a little bit chicken and egg, I would guess, because you need a little bit of a team to get a bigger team, but also maybe a little prototype or some results in order to attract at least something. What about you, Lars? Is your team kick-ass?
I hope, and I think they are.
Okay.
But I think like in academia, like a very good resource for doing startups, I think are PhD students and postdocs and master students. As I mentioned, that maybe the professors aren't the people that should really like quit their job and do the startup, or like just be hanging on to a startup and not really contributing much to the team.
Right. And Randveig talked about this 12-week course. Did you ever take such a course to learn how to be an entrepreneur?
I don't have any of those such courses. And that's like one of the things I would like the NORA.startup to do, is to provide more of these type of courses, and not just for the PhD student postdoc, but also the older professors that may also be interested in learning how these things work.
And by you mean older professors, you mean older than us, I assume, by older.
Or us.
or even us, okay. That's, but if you were to give advice to maybe researchers that are listening here, I know there's a lot of them. So what would be the step one, Lars, since you've already done that step several times?
Yeah, so I think that step one would be to get in touch with someone who actually knows how to do a startup if you don't know that. The TTO, that's like maybe not the best place to go, but that's the easiest place to go. So, and basically, so there is this like the steps you probably want to do before you launch a company, is that you want to like figure out what is the concept. Probably it's not what is your research topic is probably not a sellable thing, and then validate that somehow, like figure out what are the customers, is anyone actually willing to pay for my great idea, and then build a team and start looking at how to get financing.
And how do I find out if somebody's willing to buy my idea, Gisle? So I have a great idea now of something based on my research, and I think this will make a lot of money within this world. How would I do that?
I love that question. It's a super good one. And I think you just have to make sure you get to know your potential customer. You should try to familiarize yourself with what is the pain point of the customer. Is the customer losing time, losing money, doing anything that's non-optimal that your solution can change? Then you might actually quantify it. And when you quantify the improvement for your customer, then you can set a price on it. And if it costs you less than your price to make it, then you should just make as much as you can and sell as many as you can globally.
Right. And in this build-up process, so as a researcher, I'm well aware of Research Council of Norway, Innovation Norway, those type of things. But I understand that out there in the quote-unquote real world, you can get finances from rich women and men out there that can help you. So where would I go? Should I go first to apply for some funding from, let's say, the Research Council, or should I ask some of the rich ladies out there to fund my company?
So if you're in academia, I would just try to get some help from the tech transfer office. They should help you a bit with getting the right team in place, getting the right business plan in place, so you can provide input to that process. And then, of course, it's important that you feel well with your team and your plans. And then there's so many capital sources, and right now it's booming. So all sorts of rich families are looking into startups. We believe that it's like going into a winter storm. When you're going to launch a startup, do it with investors as well that have been through not only booming times, but also been in times where the light has been shut off.
All right.
That's how you can find out who your best possible investor is, someone who's supporting you all the way.
And that comes before the team or after the team, or maybe at the same time?
In most cases, you would need a team to get investment from anyone, maybe except from the research council. But the TTO office, and sometimes we can help you a bit with that. And there's a lot of sources online as well for what is needed to be eligible.
Right. I think for the research council, you also need that team, at least some good CVs is relevant. And is this sort of stuff you learn in this 12-week course, Ranveig? So
yeah.
How to, exactly.
Definitely.
So exactly.
I can tell you a bit about it. So
yeah, please do.
Because it's the first pilot we're running, it's actually inspired from a course that I used to send participants to in Switzerland, which was highly successful. So what we do is that we accept applications from researchers and students that want to learn. They want to learn how to build a project. So that's the main thing. Like the main thing is to develop an entrepreneurial mindset and get the toolbox. But you can also apply with a concrete project or idea that you get to develop during the process. So at the beginning, we, for those who have not yet a project with a team, we make up teams during a matchmaking process. So everyone is working on a concrete project in a diverse team, hopefully. And then they get, I think it's 10 weeks with workshops on how to talk to your customers or identify your customers and kind of talk with the market, how to build your team, how to fundraise and what kind of funding sources are relevant for you, how to deal with IPR, how to present your company, and really get to develop the whole project during the course of the training. And at the end, we'll of course have a demo day where you can present to investors. I just find it really amazing to see the interests we've got, and it really shows how this space have changed. I think actually more than half, probably 80% is data science academics who have applied for this course. So I'm really hopeful for the future that we will see a lot more startups coming out of academia in the years to come.
I certainly hope so. And is it 12 weeks complete? Because I don't have 12 weeks available in my time schedule. Or is it?
Well, I was quite interested to see when we opened, like, will we actually be able to attract the PhDs, the postdocs, the researchers?
Yep.
But we did. We actually did. And that's amazing because I know how busy these people are. But it shows that a lot of people are really looking to commercialize now.
But it's 100% 12 weeks. So you work from 8 to 4.
No, not 100%. Okay. It's 4 hours each Thursday. Then there's some mentor sessions where all the teams will work with seasoned entrepreneurs. And there's also, you need to develop the project. So you need to meet and kind of talk to customers, get your hands dirty during the course as well.
So it's possible to do it alongside that job as a professor at postdoc. Yes. Okay, good. And one of the things you talked about, Ranveig, is allowance to allow for failure. So say that it's okay to fail sometimes, and maybe fail fast is something that is said very often. And how many times did you fail, Lars? Or not at all? The company was a success at first.
So this was the first company, so and the second one did go as well.
Okay.
So 50% is success.
50%. Yeah. And did you learn a lot from the from this?
I did learn, yes. But I just also want to add something about like the financing part for those of us in academia. Like we have our salary, and we are relatively free to use the time to whatever we like. So it is maybe like the first step isn't to say, okay, how can I get funding in order to start developing my idea? Maybe you want to do that in your as a university employee and start developing the idea, and that's often needed in order to apply for public funding or especially get like private investors on board. So like my advice would just be like, just start start doing this. It sounds very complicated and scary, but it is something that can be learned, and maybe you will succeed on the first try.
Right. But you succeeded on the second. So it's, or
on the first.
Oh, in the first, but you failed on the second. Okay, I'm just kidding. So because I think it's a little bit of two different approaches, because you're saying just jump into it, and Ranveig is giving this way 12 weeks, 12 steps program.
You should still jump into it. Like if you're ready and you have something, just start. No doubt. It's just if you didn't have something concrete yet, or you don't have a year to wait on the next course, just start. That's the way, like doing is the best way you can learn. But if you have the time and you want to prepare for something, maybe that comes in the future, then I think it could be beneficial to do a short course or just start talking to people. But if you're ready to do it, just do it.
All right. Okay. So if you're ready to do it, just do it. Gisela, I assume you agree with this one. But what are the normal pitfalls researchers as me typically goes through? You mentioned some of them, but I would imagine there's a lot more.
Yeah, one of the main ones that you go from academia with a very academic team, and you're used to getting funding for a lot of large projects, which tend to last for many years. And going from R&D to business is hard. Going from R&D to startup is even harder, because you have very limited resources. You need to show traction, get customers, make a product. And then when the product is made, you need to have product market fit, and then you must scale up. There's a lot of different kind of things you will need knowledge to and mentoring on. So normal pitfall is to just think like you're still in academia and spend too long, not get enough funding. And when you get funding, you scale up your team long time before your product market fit, and then suddenly you have a lot of challenging problems. So that's why it's like fjellvettreglene.
I know these 9 of them, yes.
Yeah, listen to people who've been out there in the mountains before. They know a lot about how the mountain is.
Okay, so one of the pitfalls is then not listening to experienced people and think, yeah, we as professors, we think, we know best. We how to do it. And maybe it's not the best one. Okay, so that is very interesting to hear. But it's one of the things that we don't really hear much about is the scale-up part. We heard a lot about we start with a small company, we just get out there. And what are there's some researchers here that I have already started with something, but I want to scale up more. Do you have any, Gisela, do you have any guidance to those type of companies as well?
Yeah, when you have found a customer that is willing to pay, and you know that there's other customers similar to the first one, try to find as many that are similar to that customer and as big as possible, regardless of where they are on this planet, and just make sure you nail the sales. And maybe if it's too easy, you can double your price or multiply your price a lot. And then you just take that niche globally before you do anything else, or before you look at other geographies. You should just take care of your product market fit, and then scale when you have that and not before. So scaling up is not as hard as starting up. Starting up phase, that's when you don't have a product, you don't have customers, and that's super challenging. When you have a product ready, you have references, you have customers, things are going to be so much easier. So scaling up is the easy part. Everybody say it's so hard, but no.
It's easier. Okay. So what about you, Lars? It's because did you scale up to outside of Norway, or is your company a Norwegian-based system?
I think it's still in the startup phase, so it hasn't become a scale-up yet. And
when you plan to scale up, which we now have learned is very easy, how do you go to Europe, or do you go to the rest of the world? Or where it's Europe and the US primarily. Yeah. And then is that also something that's part of your course, Ranveig, or is it just very starting phase, the scale-up part? It's not scaling up. Like in that sense, but it's of course kind of making sure that the company you're building is prepared to grow in the future. So again, the things we say, like who are the first people you take on board, like how do you build a team, how do you organize ownership,
between the early founders, and what happens if someone leaves the team, what happens with their ownership if they're suddenly not working on it anymore. So those kind of decisions you have to know about, and or like hopefully know about, and do in the early stages, that will enable your company to grow in the future.
And is this Gründergarasjen, is this only available to researchers like PhD students, etc., or is it available for anyone to join?
It is open for anyone to join that we accept,
Okay.
but we kind of have a mandate to incubate companies coming from the Simula system and AlphaMet. But then we will always be open for also getting external projects on board. And as I said, we're really the very first phase. That's the kind of companies we're working on, those who are working towards building their first version of the product, those who are approaching their very first sale, and those who are finding their very first investment. All the companies in the garage are in that phase.
Great. So we will end with now last question that is the same question to all, and it's this question we always end the NORA startup webinars with, and this is if you think of NORA a couple of years into the future, they've helped startup companies in some way, helped entrepreneurship, helped professors, etc. What would be the best solution to go for? Let's assume that they'll be very successful in a couple of years. What would be that success? We can maybe start with Gisle, and then we go to Ranveig and Lars at the end.
If you're able to engage and inspire so that everyone feels an urge to create something big and bigger than they actually thought of in the beginning, then you have succeeded.
That is succeed. What do you think, Ranveig? So what is the level of success we need to get NORA even more successful than they are today?
I think if you will just be able to make this world a bit like entrepreneurship, creating companies a bit less frightening and strange to researchers. Like very often when I talk about entrepreneurship to people some people in academia that's not used to this, they're like, oh, it's just full of fancy words and blah blah blah, and I'm like, no, it's not. It's like really hands-on and practical what you need to do here, and you can do it. So right. Just convincing more people that is possible and it's something for them, that would be great.
Trying to convince more people, making it less scary. What do you think, Lars?
I also support that. So basically building a culture for entrepreneurship at Norwegian universities.
Great, thank you. Today we've learned a lot about entrepreneurship. We learned a lot about making companies, making startups, also from academia. We've had with us 3 very skilled speakers: Lars Bongo, professor at the University of Tromsø and co-founder of MedSensio; Gisle Østring, head of investment at Startup Lab; and Ranveig Strøm, director of innovation at Simula Research Lab. If you're interested in NORA, interested in NORA Startup, please visit our websites and please check in our webinars, which are happening most Fridays. This might be the last one before the holidays, and if you have some free time during the holidays, it might be time to start a new company there. Thank you and have a nice weekend.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.